Thank you so much, Jen and Alexia, for doing this. It's really a tremendous labor. It's such an honor for Tierra Narrative to have this curatorial fellowship at the Poetry Project and for the whole staff to be so supportive in this endeavor and really doing this virtually and for the first time. So thank you so much to everybody involved. We are so excited that all of you are able to join us for this event. Thank you to the staff, to the poets, and the incredible interpreting team, Jen, Alexia, Isela, and Lani, for making this materially and technologically possible. And thank you to the rest of the Tierra Narrative Collective. We are just 2 members, and this event is made possible by the many conversations that we've had with the others, Kenya Guillen, Genesis Mancherena-Baj, Risli Soberanis, and Leslie Martinez. The Poetry Project traditionally shares a statement of safer spaces and some Zoom tips at the beginning of their events. Please refer to them in the chat where a Poetry Project moderator will share links to these documents in both English and Spanish. So we will open with just a few words about tonight's program. Isthmus Dream Transits brings together 3 incredible poets whose work raises questions for us about how dreaming and revisioning remap the colonized space, history, and lineages that we call Central America and the Caribbean, really. So we ask, as an embodiment of dreaming, how can poetry alter our relationships to colonial geographies and their spectral residues? When we think about Central America, we think about the idea of the isthmus, a linking landmass that is a launch pad, a zone of drifting and traffic, errancy and nomadic thinking, a bridge that sits beside the rich archipelago of the Caribbean, the geography of which has been so crucial to the work of its poets and thinkers. Our dream worlds shape the way we come to understand history, as Walter Benjamin tells us. We start to wonder about dreams as a terrain where time collapses and destabilizes, where there is radioactive decay and failure, but also where we might find opportunities for ruptures in coloniality and to slip into a different current. Byung-Chul Han speaks about how capitalism strives to smoothen time, creases out rituals, thresholds, anything that is not the work of production. Knowing this, how might we learn to tune into the frequency and generosity of dreams once more? And what can we learn about refusal there? What are the stakes? We are proud to introduce to you 3 poets whose work we find thinks alongside these questions and more. And a note about translations tonight. We are greatly indebted to translators who have helped make these poets' work accessible across languages. Spanish translations of Shyanne Figueroa Bennett's and Edgar Garcia's poems were done by Jen Eliana Hofer and Alexia Veytia-Rubio, who really came so skillfully through under time constraints. And then English translations of Wingston González's work are by Urayoán Noel. So without further ado, we would like to introduce our first reader, Shyanne Figueroa Bennett. Shyanne Figueroa Bennett's poems are full of multiliminalities, hailing the landscapes within which she reaches toward ancestral flickers and figures. Things seem to be devoured by the rhythm or rhythm of her poetics, only to resurface in a repeated phrase, echoes and trembles that push through the surface of the colonial terrain. Her poems bring to the fore histories that haunt the Caribbean, but not without invoking the ancestors whom she wishes to name. Haunting in these poems are a way to name home. As Figueroa Bennett writes in her manuscript, Hearsay, hailing the Afro-Taína figure, she writes, quote, "The sonic landscape of her voice is shadow language, how to sketch spokeness." A Brooklyn poet with roots in Panama, Jamaica, and Puerto Rico, her poems explore the intersections of Black womanhood, Latinidad, fragmentary oral and historical narratives, spirituality, and the metamorphosis of language across diaspora landscapes. Her work is published or forthcoming in Green Mountains Review, Oversound, the Accentos Review, and Recliner, among other places. She is a VONA alum and Girl Right Now mentor. Currently, she is an MFA candidate at Columbia University, where she is a recipient of a Chair's Fellowship and a Creative Writing Teaching Fellowship. let's hand the floor over to Shyanne.
Thank you so much, Mariam, for that introduction. And thank you also to Oscar for and Tierra Narrative for putting together this event, for curating it. Thank you to the Poetry Project as well for this event. And also thank you to Jen, Eleana, and Alexia for the time that you put into translating my work and the care that was put into it over this past week. I deeply appreciate all of you for your attention. Thank you. Just a few notes on my poem. I use many different voices in this poem. In some ways, they're separate poems, but in many ways, I have been thinking of them as one long poem. I pull on many cultural and linguistic and musical references from many places, but especially from the Caribbean. And for me, in my sense of the Caribbean, I include Central America in that, and particularly Panama within that. And I'm also using different languages other than standard American English. I'm using Jamaican Patois, some Spanish, and a Brooklyn-based African-American vernacular. And then small note, just tumbao and dembo. Tumbao being the bass rhythm of salsa and dembo being the bass rhythm of reggaeton. Okay, now I'll read. Hearsay. At the end of daybreak, Amy Césaire. But today I captured the island's bright beaches, blue mist from the ocean rolling into the fishermen's houses. By the shores I was born. Sounds of the sea came in at my window. Life heaved and breathed in me. Kamal Brathwaite. We heard isthmus unknown in lands of wood and water, named Borican, like pockmarks on tentacle contortions. This is horizon cracked, liminal made molten. Blood blooms in plumes in our water, ravenous dispersal. Glow gaze up the Dr. Bird's green street flight in homage to constant appraisal. Remember, this is where maroon hands gather bounty as fortification. And remember too, this is where Afro-Taína belts reggaeton in multifarious loops on a brownstone stoop. She be braiding harmonies, slapped wave on rock, coqui hop. She be pulsing tumbao with her hip sway, pop and lock. Here, the sonic landscape of her voice is shadow language. How to sketch spokenness. Them trapped in little words. Loud means her voice decolonizes space. Like, yo, whining and
bailando, whining en de la isla.
Our fusion is not exotification, because that ain't my Brooklyn. The color of our coolie, mezquito, negritude is not them concern. We are silver people, and we make a story whereupon we arrived. Afro-Taína, you bell-laden, you ancient of ancients, you land-tied, you migrant loose, you border erasure, You ocean spilling, you Eugene wrinkle, you wrinkle in the face, you chain breaker, you blood washing, you honey smoker, you palm lifter, you stare chatter, you trouble in the shoal, you little womb, you bent cross, you brazen wood, you song weaver, you blood drinking, you sun held, you tear stream sustenance, you omni, you tide breaker, you milk honey, you still minute transcendent, you tablet breathing, you be breaking Atlantic, you archipelagic, you Chagres roaring, you Gamboa thick, you live in the split, you big up yourself, you here and there, you child of Tumbao and Dembo. Tumbao and Dembo. Drum dum come, cowskin topped, rock back chords, canto trombone, brass's last mass, stitching torn songs, gold beams refract in chromatic patch matched. Quilted choral calls our morn-born musings, mourning lost belongings our worn words carry. Ripe cane dewdrops, whelming sable songs, tune for splintered singing. Tribe here. We culebra cut out, made to be unmade. Our faces recast, ironed, and hands lit dynamite. Yardy with canal fever, sweat pelting her brow when she digging the mine language in blue mountains up in bush and kaleidoscopic green. Her brazen arm shovel pump rise and fall. Plena y bomba is the music of rust-crusted shackles and rapturous gong. Ground crackling underfoot while Yardy's mouth echoes breaking. Water. But make no mistake, her flag is edged color or one long braid of missing remnant words, a kind of patois for the sewing of maid selves at Lake Gatun shore. Yardy speaks. Them think men don't know nothing about tough work, but no, sir. Me wash a woman, me wash them shit, and uno don't know, me snap chicken neck quick, butcher cow head split bit, rock up coconut, breadfruit, and ackee pit, then take men for bed with me pepper hips. Them not know, them a wash me away. Them not know, me broke it up every day. Tribe here. Our war spoil. Our fettered hands, limbs, slow bending like gnarled roots, groping parched soil. Abuelo speaks. Body translated. The process more like disintegration than transference. I lost me in occluding towers of smoke. My hands muslin bound in assembly line, sewn eyes, ribbons nodding, then the white fibers caging my lungs. I was one, I was multitude, who chose to make of our skins rudders and sails, of our hair ropes and ladders. We, like Jesus, walked on water, but like Peter, knew we were not God. Divinity, always an elixir for those who could afford it. But we walkers cross oceans like mere miracles. New York, Miami, Chicago, we the bootstrap generation, huddled in the mass of ourselves, sailing on seas that salvage our souls. Tumbao is ocean. Foam crest edge gathers till eaten, chain lock rhythm or salvage conga talk. Make it known, make it subverse swindling, un bolero con cymbal shimmer dance. Oh, Tumbao, child of the first washed over on waves, being of the pebble skippers, island hoppers, Trinidad, Curacao, Guadeloupe. She razored feet bound and untethered. She, blistering hands, melodied to blues on the hacienda. Tumbao, machete hot cane, and let the soft stalk drop. Tumbao, at midnight, cow skinned into a drum. Tumbao, settled in Cubao, braided herself cinch landscape, then named herself Tumbao. When abuelo become duppy, when the curse casts, these coal pot stirrings and forlorn viejas, what is remembered in absence? It is easier to make a mock dress, name it sentimentality, to yearn for a people who never call you their own. What is the color of the Caribbean from this side of the island? Migrant is split family. Wife, here, there, child, here, there. We are duplication to mimic a sound reality. A home building proliferates and clone ghostings of our kindred other. Simulate chains broken in seared accents. Yes, please keep mending. In seared accents, yes. Chains broke our kindred other, simulate clone ghostings. A home building proliferates to mimic a sound reality. We are duplication, child here, there, wife here, there. Migrant is split family. Our Caribbean from this side of the island. What color never calls you their own? Your people, name it sentimentality or yearning. It is easier to make a mock dress membered in absence. What is reacquired in forlorn viajes? These coal pot stirrings. When the cas, when abuelo become duppy. Tribe here. Calcutta raised, golden throng splinter to satisfy palate's steadfast want. Cooley speaks. Kernman cuts me, sugar spits palm. What we carry, call it work or song. Chest of sorries in jewel, studied tongues, call us colored, but dyed hands hold long. Memory caught in namesake syllabics, yet one lash to my face, and somehow in exile, the hands was erased. One stop on the ship's serpentine path, Hall, our blackened father, Hall, our blackened father of indentured servitude. Whim dropped coolly in moorland, not Port of Spain, Mauritius, Fiji, Cape Town, or Demerara, because laborers are forged for aimlessness. We be any island in any sea, coolly our name molten thumbprint, blood sign for the illiterate. In the year of abolition, we become slave twice over, packed bulk tight and sick twice over. Kolkata's ephemeral hauntings is not unlike Accra's. In the mind, the two merged. Coasts nameless and waves solemn devour. Oh, Tumbao and Dembo, twinned two-toned rested from the bow and stern, rattling at geniture, quake shake the hands, the feet, hips in swing as gyrations, protestations hearken back, flush tongue, pallid thrash from the stomach pit, fermented call, stewing bombs in darkened bodies, before the shed, before arrivance, before dawn. I sang, I sung, be it salsa, I sung, trumpets bawling waterfalls, calls heaping holy hums. Daughter speaks. What is given? Shed. In a name made elastic, for capacity and impression, genocided away. Extinction is bolded word reserved for the frail skulls of birds and the ghosts of our islands. Sometimes we call them, utter a name we know is not their name, into a mirror that makes itself mirror before us, as land beckoning binds the same dirt curdling in our blood. Daughters beckon Afro-Thaina. Land, you burn me. Oh, land of ancestor unknown. Stranger, you mock me in my lack of knowing how to call you. Land, tierra, colonizer speech straight jackets my tongue. Iti, Quisqueya, your too far goneness incisions my song. Land is misnomer. Land is what my body has become in its blackness. Neat our estrangement. Meet our wanton prairie breaker, oil crawler. Meet in the woods roaring an orange blaze. Meet and bounds to measure my containment. A Panama hat from Ecuador is folded and tucked away. A sliding hill, explosives. The trimmed fat of a rainforest cut. Water fills in for what is lost. Water has a way of sustaining and then making us want. One nation becomes two, and they imagine it breaks a continent. A canal incisures a land, the land bleeds, and we are told to live in the flow. Circuitous resolve sanctions hypnotic revolutions. A missile peels like a banana, while elsewhere, a criollo plucks a banana with sun-poached hands. Blisters riddle the tongue, well worn. Blisters saddle a caught-wrapped heart of a thing. Blisters ravage the call, and we are left only with siphoning howl. A brown woman holds her child holding a child. The most held child peers deeply into her mother's knotted hands. Afro-Taína, I want to write into the depths of you, spivot and twist the pit gutted right out of you. My tongue rolls out of a mouth professant because everywhere they sought us, but I am most well acquainted with here. Afro-Taína speaks. My sky hemisphered into west, Atlantic ridged a sharded womb. A lightning hand's gluttonous consumption and sun-filled boom. Words shake loose, train dress of time. Go forth, and I, lifted to the mountain, watches it crack. Continent split, scatter. Quaking seeds, and so begins the ephemeral. Replenish, sown rhythm and hot breath, shit, sweat, sex, our clay body strum into percussion. Daughter's chorus. At daybreak, my call is quivering sweat, thrashing in waves, vacillating affection. In cane fills, my call is machete tongue reaping, rum pungent bellows brewed in my belly. Like Cerese's bitter tea, my call stings the tongue with twilight's healing perfection. And the rustling of horns and trombones is a low hum to my call's slow piercing. My call is seismic soil coiling in island time. The land's welded arch becomes our horizon. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm here to introduce our next reader, our next poet, Edgar Garcia. And Edgar Garcia's recent collection of poems, Skins of Columbus, A Dream, Ethnography. The dream becomes the site through which history is not just understood, but unraveled from the written word of Christopher Columbus and the journals that documented his imposition upon the so-called New World. As he writes in the book's introduction, quote, Here is a study about how language is captivated by and captures the negativity of the hemispheric experience surging from its southern sources, how its inconsistency and unevenness are stopgaps because in practice, a void and its myth are not exclusive of each other, but reciprocal and dynamic, semiotic and aesthetic. Garcia's work also makes obvious that play and rigor aren't as opposed to each other as we think. As he said to the poet Harmony Holiday in a recent conversation I was at, we live in risk formation, and divination is a way to rethink risk. That descent into underworld is about necessity. Garcia is a poet and scholar of the hemispheric Americas. In addition to Skins of Columbus, he is also the author of Signs of the Americas, a poetics of pictography, hieroglyphics, and Quipu from University of Chicago Press. He's currently working on a book on books about the Popol Vuh, Los Cantares Mexicanos, risk analysis, especially divination, and Atlantis. He also regularly collaborates with visual artists and teaches in the departments of English and creative writing at the University of Chicago. And I'll pass it over. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. And thank you everybody who played a part in making this event come together. The few people that I can name by name, Jen, Eleana, Alexia, Mariam, Oscar, are just a small portion of everybody that brought this event together. And to the larger portion of whom I'm very grateful. And even reaching beyond that, I just want to express my gratitude to all of the attendees, all of the people who made it out in here for this reading. It's so wonderful to see so many beautiful faces, and for the faces that I can't see, to see so many names of friends, and for the people who I can't see and the names who aren't friends, so many names that I've admired from afar for a while. So it's just a great collection of good spirits. Thank you all for coming out. I'm going to read from two books. The first book that I will read from is the collection Skins of Columbus that Oscar described before moving into reading from a new collection of poems, Zea, which is a creation story for contemporary times. And Skins of Columbus is a work of dream journaling, dream poetry, dream ethnography, which takes very seriously the historical knowledge of the dream, and in doing so, rejects the Freudian conception of the dream, which is that dreams only represent individual experiences of some kind of universal template. Skins of Columbus implicitly, and I guess in the essays included in it somewhat explicitly, argues that no, in the dream is historical archive and we can access it through dream work. So for the 4 months during which Columbus traveled the coasts of the Americas, I read his journal entries every night before going to bed, thinking intently on the symbols, figures, landscapes, tropes, processes, to make myself dream in the colonial unconscious. Notes throughout the night, recorded my dreams, and in the mornings and in the days, I wrote the poetry, wrote the essays, and made the collages that constitute the book, Skins of Columbus. And I'm going to read just the first few days from the dream journal. Sunday, Thursday, October 11. Roughest sea so far, tube-nosed seabirds on green reeds, a cane, a stick bobbing, carved iron in a small board with marks like lizard hands, like little lights at the end of a hall signaling pigs to squeal hopes of land. Through day, we landed and saw the lizards upright like sideways Fs or Ys upside down, crimping their necks to look at us. Impossible words by force, fish chopping the water around us all. My Christ, my surrendering fish, I see what you signal to take the dinosaurs by force. Tuesday, Saturday, October 13. To a broken planet came men, bellies and long hair carved like spears, all wet, all playing games. They are a pleasure to watch, so flat, so slender, so fast. They split my world in two into a dead body hiding in my skin. Wednesday, Sunday, October 14. The island sick, fearful shouts to us, coming from heaven for help to us. Thursday, Monday, October 15. And maybe I should have explained that the two day names associated with the date are the difference between the day it was when Columbus was experiencing that date against the day of the week it is when it is me experiencing that date. So in 1492, October 15th fell on a Thursday. And in, I guess, God, when did I write this book? 2015, 2016, when I was experiencing those dates, on October 15th, it was a Monday. So Thursday, Monday, October 15th. Anchor daylight free from shoals, hosted sails, bracelets, legs and arms, crystals, the shape of diamonds. I touch to make them shudder and look away, and I could take what I want. Bracelets on their arms and legs, in their ears, noses, and around their necks, plus some dry sliced leaves they prize. And I've been asked at times, why would I do something like this? Whatever. Submit myself to such torturous dreaming. And the answer that I have to that is, I don't know. But I felt compelled to swallow the poison. And to me, there is no poetry of good ethical standing on the hemisphere that doesn't allow itself to swallow the poison. So I felt I had to do this to process the poison and make something out of it. Friday and Saturday, Tuesday and Wednesday, October 16. Watching an airplane crash is like what I feel watching their canoes off the coast subtending, making wobbly half circles inside me, bags of human shit hanging from my lungs. I don't know how to describe it. The explosive fire across the water. Have you ever seen a plane crash? I haven't, but I fear what it feels like seeing all those people dip down. So those are the first few poems from the Skins of Columbus project. And now I'm going to read two poems from a new book of poetry, unpublished, called Zea. And it's a creation story for contemporary times. And what I mean by that is a creation story that begins from apocalypse, a creation story that begins in crisis, a creation story that begins in total devastation. So some models for this creation story, you might imagine, have been books like The Popol Vuh, Kichimaya Story of Creation, Paradise Lost, the Dinibahana, The Epic of Gilgamesh, The Changing Light at Sandover. And the book is in 3 sections, 9 cantos each section. Each of those 9 cantos is 9 stanzas long with 5 lines to a stanza, and it's written in pentameter, so it's 5 beats to a line. Total symmetry. I'm going to read the 2nd and the 5th canto. The 2nd canto is titled The Earth, and the 5th canto is titled A Quieter Register Than the Skin, the lightning, the flood. From Zaya, Canto 2, The Earth. Here we are then. It is still all still. It is still the time of waiting. It is still the time of hushed skies, demographies unmeasured. Any bowl is the first of its kind. Any word spoken in a moment of isolated calm, in a room removed from the swarm, is the first word. Any thought of parents who tried and in their trying did worse is their beginning, their birth. Any creaking of friends is the first creak of trees in a forest of signs, unknown, unscratched. The canyon before paranoia, before fear, is not even gathered. The valley of turquoise leaves has not flashed. Nothing rests because there is no symmetry of restiveness. Your face on the earth is a form unfulfilled, nothing so real as a shore comes through. Nobody speaks, no crab, no flower, no quince, no chime. Blight is like a bent ankle just before the runner sets off, not panting, impatient. Watching, the moon is drowsy and ultramarine with clouds and drops of dark water. Talking like a storm or small child, it starts up the birds. Their blazing green feathers suddenly shine as if it were the name of a god itself. Who wonders, who worries, how should it be? How to conceptualize the root from the tree? Who will feed that bunting and who will bunt the tree? Who will plant the word inside the crystal hollow of the seed? Who will sustain that dark time to pale luminosity? Who will praise us? Who will suggest the spirit numbly dumb and in whatever low glare they get from having to get through all of this? That's all it took, though. Still, even then, a mountain rustled with
Una montaña susurró por las iluminaciones del pino. Sabia postergó ni por un segundo más en el calvero. Una alcanzó hasta llegar al río mientras el otro se alzó hacia arriba. Entonces se las llamó tierra. Mientras aún no había nadie para decir tales cosas, sentían gusto y bostezaban con...
Suddenly there saying, this work should have something returned. Thunderous warning. They worried then, hushed, as to whether they had done it justly. Canto 5. A quieter register than the skin. The lightning, the flood. Over and over again. And we are flooded, and we are crushed, and we are blistered, and bit by the bugs, and burnt by the flint, and gouged like resin, and rained upon every night in storms that blind us with flashing electricity. Like jaguars crushing skulls with their teeth, or tearing tendons into strips in which, maybe, you notice the gleam of joy to be in that moment amidst that which you love most, your people, your things. Maybe they even
Tal vez
say,
incluso dicen, te comeremos, te probaremos en nuestras bocas y te haremos pedazos. Tu carne.
and it is time for us to dance and climb and flatten you with our flames. And that's okay. It is their time. and you love these little words more than anything in the world. So you are demolished, you are bent down, you are half dead on the hillside in the highest feelings of life itself. You are ruined and completely ready. And in that way, one day, you appear to yourself to be a kind of monkey. That's right, you become a child of the woods again, framed by the sag of your own heaving limbs, and you swing like hell through the trees to stay in this fire of arrival. And your heart almost flees your chest for fear of missing the dawn. You howl then like an anxious dog. It is beautiful and it makes sense, like words on a page, like a mistake that won't fall away. And your hand comes under the scrutiny of so much time, toppled and crushed. It shakes and it bends, and then you feel as if you can touch 2 times or 3. Faraway times cry out to you with your thick brow in the vanished air, with your eyes wandering in the warm light, with your thoughts daubed by stars, shining rocks. And then you feel as if you can take the flood face on, plexus tilted to the sky and outstretched fingers, plain as syllables reaching in 2 or 3 directions at once. How could you not perceive we were behind you then? How did you not hear the gnashing? And when our tongues as hot as coals snuck under your velvet feet, did you not fidget, skulk, and sneak, tighten your toes and clench your teeth? You were like a cloud filled with light then, and you confused the lightning for the dawn.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. I mean, just hearing Shyanne first and then Edgar, and just wow. I mean, this event is just such a dream come true. I've read all your works separately, and but it's just so different when, it's the voices are here and the work comes alive, and yeah,
I'm blessed by the invitation and so grateful for the great company that we brought together here. So yeah, and the great company of voices. So gracias, Oscar.
Yeah,
gracias.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to go a little off the script.
Thank you, Oscar. Thank you.
I'm an astrologer. This is what I do for my full-time job, and it's funny because as this reading's happening, Venus is in Pisces, and it's at the degree of exaltation. So in astrology, it's like the moment where Venus is kind of her most juiciest in the sky. And it's not lost on me how that's during this reading in the space. So thank you so much for being here, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce our last poet, Wingston González. Wingston González' work to us is one where the remix rejoices, where we enter a whirlpool, and where the page invokes a vamp space. In his chapbook, No Voodoo Please, self-invention is invoked against the unknowable, and in its travels fractures colonialism's cultural accumulations. In poems carried by the music of Garifuna language, the poet invokes, almost spell-like, a chorus of presences who establish that this is not a space of capital H history, but as he writes, the story of the Garinagu people. The chorus moves us through a remapping of the landscape, its holes, gaps, obstacles, even as it battles with itself. It is in a poetry of generosity in which González enchants us as readers. González is a textual producer and a member of the literary collective La Retaguardia, but it's more than a poet of written work. Also collaborates, has also collaborated in the fields of dance, visual arts, music. 2 of his books have been translated into English. No Voodoo Please from Ugly Duckling Press, and also ¿Qué haré con mi lugar en el cielo? Both by Urayoán Noel. He is the author of many books in Guatemala, most recently Cómo se hace un relámpago, And his 2015 book, Translaciones, received the Luis Cardosa y Aragón Mesoamerican Prize for Poetry. And without further ado, se lo paso a Wingston.
Hola, muchas gracias, ¿no? Gracias a toda la gente que hizo posible que estuviéramos aquí, que serían muchísimos, ¿no? Muchísimas.
Thanks to everyone who made this happen. That's a lot of people and very happy to be here. And there was a lot of people, you know, there is computer stuff, email stuff, and, you know, capacity with technology. It's a thing. So, well, I am from Guatemala. I am from the Caribbean, and I am from the Caribbean part of Guatemala. And I've been interested in literature and poetry. So my grandma and my mom did that to me enough. You know, they used to tell their stories like that. And the storytelling, the daily storytelling they did of all of this and of the dream. And I think these two books, the first one that came out through Ugly Duckling Press, a lot of people that are here were part of that, and I love to see everyone here. And it is, please receive my enormous, I'm so grateful to everyone and the translators. So I'm going to read a couple of texts from that, and I'm also going to read a couple of texts from a more recent book that I have, and that's a series of poems and texts. I think they're texts that I wrote in conjunction with my friend Eduardo Ramirez Figueroa, and the translator was Urayoán Noel. And I hope I'm not going to get stuck, but here it is. And this is A Myth of Another Self. He was an artificial boy, a strange artificial boy in some sort of plastic prairie, a myth that destroyed everything it touched, everything that touched it, and what.
Yo era un niño artificial. Ese niño era yo. Un fulano que quería el hoy como se quiere un puñado de dientes en la calavera de la abuela. Ese niño que era yo. Como decíamos todos, por decir algo, llegaba fósil, al menos a gota de ADN conservada en el ámbar, en una jungla del Caribe de ese chico. Era yo. Una suerte de paraíso maldito, un Edén recobrado por la expansión que sueltan la rienda de su insignificante cólera. Ese chico era yo. Preocupado por las palabras mejores tratados por otras, por un animal mediocre hilado a una santidad invertida, esta presencia sin aura, esta presencia sin arco. Qué mierda saber que morimos, que no significa que morimos. Ese chico era yo. Y con los días la ceguera me hace menos sin misericordia. Y con los días voy llorando por prados y nubes. El niño que sospecha que un difunto va de caminata en su pecho aún deforme, soy yo. Todo lo que está dentro se halla más completo afuera, mucho mejor y a contraluz. Y con los días el niño que era yo se abalanza sobre la paz insecticidas y cree que el mar de Europa es el limbo helado por sus sueños. Ese niño era yo. Un cerebro en un cubo que la radiación de Júpiter cree es cosa de las palabras que apenas sabe ordeñar. Ese niño seré yo. Una imagen de Livingston de 1993, con los cartuchos que se derriten como el aliento venenoso del cielo, las dos calles principales del pueblo. Ese niño. Tartamudean juntas una canción que nadie ha querido siquiera recordar. Una casa de naipes justo dentro de la sinagoga se derrumba sin asombro ni lámpara que cuide la actitud inofensiva de la demolición. Ese chico, sol de óxido, sol de llamas, oxígeno en llamas, oh, dos soles filtrados por la historia de la cultura. Ya ven, qué miserables lagartos en una fuente de cemento, el río vidrioso tan cerca de las estrellas despintadas de un equipo de básquetbol. Ese chico que cree, que sospecha, que con los días que pasen, que conforme los días que pasen podrá sobrevivir al magnético sonido de la gloria, a la simpleza de la gloria, que no sabrá apenas consiste en lubricidades sencillas, en pájaros y alacranes, en adornos de papel de dentes y fiestas de cumpleaños, en llorar a secas y sin mucha pasión las calles que alguien borra de un mapa de escuela, que será el niño gótico para el que la cultura es una acumulación de ideas provistas para ser borradas por la entropía. Y nada escrito en mármol, todo a merced de una desconocida energía que se expande, que se divide, que divide las necesidades de la gente que mañana a esta hora habrá olvidado su propia sangre congelada. O la palabra de Dios. No digo que no, muchacha. Esta es la historia del pueblo garífuna. Mariposa de desgracia robótica negra flamenca, posa de piedra, el cielo caribeño, decir el verbo más coloquial del mundo. El cadejo en la cima de la sal y en la cima de ella los barcos. Señoras y señores, el ruido de un elefante en las goletas. Yurumen más que memoria. Miedo, llagas, muchachas vestidas de harina, guerreros. Guanáragua. Este idioma representa al otro. Traducción, señores, no digo fuego y de los libros la sumisión emerge. ¿Quién quemará la desgracia de la casta marfil de los negros esclavos del mar? Ver al horizonte y ver las series, ver amistad, ver hacia allá, aceptarse encadenados, machetes y la sangre, aparte, bocas blancas celestiales y el letargo de la historia, de Yurumei, los jóvenes burócratas solo ven hacia el cielo. Los jóvenes burócratas solo ven hacia arriba. Los jóvenes burócratas solo ven hacia el techo, solo hacia el miedo. Ahí donde no hay raíces, donde no hay nada, está el testigo enterrando las uñas en el fuego solitario del azul Caribe. Ahí donde están los fantasmas que me riegan, pero no las raíces. Las raíces, no, my babies, no, señores. Las raíces, no, de eso el agua y el cadejo. De eso el agua y el maldito cadejo, my sister, maldito cadejo. Señores, el comienzo. Yo partí de algas. Yo partí diciendo, mozo guarero, mamá garifuna badolanido, mamá garifuna mo. Mamá garifuna duna, y absuelto de todas las dudas en una cantina llena de sirenas vírgenes, sube el bulle y sube el chamán y suben los brujos y sube la bestia profeta y sube Loa Petro Congo muñeca negra. Este es el buzón del anticristo. Con calma, con calma. Quien dice luego desencaja, maldice con calma. Estoy desterrado, soy un hombre negro que carece de raíz. Quien lo diga, digo, y fue uno mana después de las velas que prendimos ante el altar. Señores, esta es la verdadera, la auténtica historia del pueblo garífuna. Protégeme, bendita madre del Nazareno. No es esta, sister, la verdadera, la auténtica historia del pueblo garífuna. Protégeme, bendita madre del Nazareno. Las de las goletas sobre la piedra, sobre la piel, sobre el horizonte del hombre blanco, negar. Yurume is Africa, is a y negar a Yurume. África is a foreign place, dijo Leroy. La espada salva la razón, señores. El hijo de las entrañas se llama Adán González, y el hombre que está solo frente a la luz soñada por Dios, por el sarduy liviano, el sarduy más liviano del mar, y consciente de esa liviandad es un grave puente. La orquídea, el hierro cambia mi vida, el hierro cambia mi negro discurso, y amaneció muerto el poema entre rayas. Bendita la capa negra del Nazareno, mami, bendito el santo trasero de Satuyé. Bendita las 11 mami, benditos los turistas y las palmeras, y bendita las 11 oncas, los 11 jaguares, y bendita las negras quieren en bikini, y vos una que les diga tu plata, que les diga tu amor, que les diga lo que sea, sin cuenta el tiempo. ¿Dancehall o reggaetón? ¿El neobarroco o el reggaetón? La poesía, la animal, historia del pueblo garínago. Su Dios necesita un pueblo sin ombligo, uno que camine sobre las aguas y sobre la miseria, uno que sea el calor del trópico en el asombro de una ciudad saqueada, un freestyle cual esta maniática canción. Este es el ombligo del mundo, así que esta es la idea del ombligo del mundo, la prueba del amor, con una canción de Tego al fondo que llega a rayo a los árboles. Ellos no quieren saber que Haití es patria en América. Ellos no quieren saber. ¿Quién llega? Fuck you. Porque me quejo y me quejo solo porque suelo morderme en las fuestas y no bailar. Me quejo como una droga del cuerpo disperso en los cartílagos del niño que mira de lejos el exceso. Ellos no son ángeles de Etiopía. Ellos quieren un muchacho rasta que canta un mito en una estrella y un vaso de bífido. No voodoo, please. No chugu, please. No palomayombe, please. No garinago, please. No. Que nos explota el poder, el tema del poder, el glacial consejo de hombres me niega. Mama garifuna bubuya. No sos garifuna. No sos hijo del hombre. La visión del practicante. Unos caminan en el cielo, otros en la sombra, nubes y nubes como flores, estas fragancias de plumas. Unos caminan en el cielo, otros en la sombra, la visión del practicante herético, las autopistas a la altura, desatado el ruido, los hilos de hierro. Hay un guachimán en la puerta y un cayú defensor. Hay un guachimán en la puerta y un cayú defensor. Hay un guachimán en la puerta y un cayú defensor. Hay un meca de caoba y vasitos de peltre, gente de leche que gira en bucle como canciones y sueño cordonal. Hay una sección de cuerdas en medio del común de los líquenes, la curva bienaventurada, la presión del cuerpo depredado, desunido por alfileres a la puerta. Hay un guachimán en la puerta y un cayú defensor de las alucinaciones florecidas, de la palabra, de la visión del practicante. Unos caminan en el cielo y otros la desmesura, el atelaje del vacío, delgado como una larga y vasta armada del Atlántico. Hay un guachimán en la puerta y un cayú defensor. Hay unas uñas, sillas de plástico, hay fiestas de cumpleaños, hay piedras pomes, montes, hay montes giratorios de cuerpos de esmeraldas, hay como 15,000 ciudades perdidas y las amplias y adoquinadas ataduras del dato. Hay un guachimán en la puerta y un cayú defensor perfecto, y es perfecto, y es simétrico, y está sudado, y está fuera de nuestra mente el cayú defensor. El peso de una hoja de ágave, de un quinqué sobre la cima, de un iceberg de huesos y hielo, así, no muy firmes que digamos, sostenidos de la lengua mi mar, por lengua y caballos, por lengua y cenotes, por acantilados, a los caminos de este lugar de consuelo, a las selvas hediondas y a las frutas de óxido, a las casas de guayabas y a los héroes del milenio, a los pájaros, a los fucking pájaros en las puertas del telescopio. So, Señor, Lord, whatever, caminamos vientre adentro de la tormenta vaciada de signos. Vaciado del perdiguero involuble. Nosotros, los babies kaiju, diríamos, lo que pasa es que ya estábamos como dormidos debajo de la floración de los enzontles, Mr. Martin, debajo de la saliva de los coyotes, Mr. Martin, al filo del machete, Mr. Martin. Estábamos como medio dormidos en las escaleras, en los acantilados, sin manos, bajo la gloria de la acción y la belleza de los Cristos y todos los dices que no clavaremos. Los babies Cayú sostienen en la puerta de los rascacielos, en todas las peleas callejeras, en cada uno de los arcos, los partidos de fútbol y la propia energía impalpable, los mismos barranques distantes, the same fucking pesadillas móviles, la preparación para el cuarto día de Cuaresma en los bosques. Y es que los baby Cayús y la CIA habrían dicho: todos hijos de la probabilidad, nuestras simétricas emociones, se reunieron en un salón de fiestas de la Guatemala City a la hora del té con Mr. Waldo Núñez y nos confiamos a nuestros secretos y nos confiamos a la sangre de la barba María, a la voluta del habla, al mar de los abogados, a los que lloran en los conciertos, a la sal de 5 años del apocalipsis zombie, a la caída del mundo y a las ruinas y a nuestro cabello luz, cabello ayuntamiento comarcal. Y así los babies Cayús emergen para luchar contra el fuego, el cielo donde asientan las inquietudes y la más increíble todavía, y el lugar de nuestra propia fuerza inexorable, de nuestro corazón radiado de espinas y de palomas venenosas. Nos confiamos a la nieve y todos los días a la importantísima sombra radioactiva del cansancio del lector. Y para terminar, cualquier día de gracia. Un caimán hermoso, my friends. Aquí y allá, gente que no ha sido vista en años. Aquí y allá, los enormes disturbios. Aquí y allá, las inmensas linternas y las teorías que no alumbran cangrejos en el fucking campo. ¡Qué hermoso caimán, my friends! Aquí y allá, mi ánimo rebosado de buena intención y de buena palabra y buenos artículos, contra intendentes y piedras y grados y sándalos, y en torres en llamas y tesis en llamas y budas en llamas y jaguares en llamas, cruzando a nado el mar de los sargazos de la mente. Un caimán bellísimo, my friend. Una abuela caimán, de aquí allá, la incultura remedada, la incomprensión de las aguas ni dichas, ni sabidas, ni consumidas por piedras de peso y simetría, ni siquiera ni apenitas postradas por la amplia y poco distendida subjetividad de los nexos. ¡Qué bárbaro! ¡Qué tremendo! ¡Qué bello caimán, my friends! Que va a un lugar bárbaro, a una reunión de pequeños detalles y símbolos macularios. Y hablo aquí en medio de caimanes a cuya diestra se sientan, se ciñen unidades terribles y bueyes que beben indistintos de nieve y orquídea. Un caimán bellísimo, un caimán como debe ser, suelto en el patio de mi casa, en el patio de mi cara viviente, de la gran avenida de mi rostro viviente border. Un caimán suelto en mi cuerpo dividido del fuego, de las noticias y las revelaciones. Un caimán que me ve y luego lloro. Y lloro por ustedes, my friend, mis muchachitos lindos, lloro por ustedes. Lloro por un fogón de cenizas y 20 grados de amor y smoke, de la síntesis de este nuestro día de desgracia. Y atrás eso.
Wow, 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 wow. Gracias. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much, Wingston, for that tremendous reading. All these readings, I just feel there's so much emotion in the chat and so much excitement. And this is really just, this reading has been a dream. Not to play on the title, but truly it's been a dream. Thank you everybody who's been here. We know it's been a long night, but we have a very short exit survey that we are presenting to you, the audience, and also to our poets. All right, so I will drop the link in the chat. I hope this works. Does it work? All right, so these are the questions that we have for our poets, and we will let you answer 1, 2, 3, whichever of these questions in whatever order you like. Or if it just means one question, that's fine too. So these are the questions. What does play mean to you? What does the future mean to you? And what do dreams mean to you? If any of you would like to answer, pick 1, pick 2, pick 3. Tell us what you'd like. And we ask the audience to share their thoughts with us too.
Are we speaking or are we typing in the box?
You can speak it. So
Okay.
yeah, you, Shyanne, and Wingston can speak it. And we ask the audience to participate in the box if they'd like.
I'll take the first stab at it. Play, future, and dreams. I actually thought a lot about play recently because during the pandemic, we have, my partner and I, have had to provide full-time childcare for our 3-year-old daughter. And that has meant for me reassessing, or maybe actually just assessing what it is that my educational pedagogical values, my core educational values are. That moved me to do a lot of reading in child education theory, early childhood education, literature. And play comes up a lot. Just like the loads, the touchstone of progressive childhood education is play. But I became annoyed with how play came up. Play very often comes up as a kind of like stepping stone to productivity, right? Like you play to learn and you learn to work. That's, that's very often in, like even the most progressive childhood education, how play gets coded. And they all say like play is the most important thing because it helps to make good workers. And I found that very deeply frustrating. And where I did not find it so frustrating was in the works of Rudolf Steiner, famously founded the Waldorf schools, which have kind of departed from his original vision. But Rudolf Steiner, late 19th century, early 20th century, mystic, philosopher, pedagogue. I really loved his idea of play because he talks about play and wonder, play and reverence, play and ritual. And to me, that is the proper place of play in our world, especially when we think about childhood play and what it is that children do and why. That is, if it's not giving them wonder for the world, if poetic play doesn't give you wonder, why do it? That's my take. Just quickly, the future. I'm writing a book on risk analysis, and I loved all of Wingston's reading, but there was one moment where it was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about when I'm talking about risk analysis. Cuando dijo, hijos de la probabilidad. Hijos de la probabilidad. Right?
Children of probability.
The problem with risk analysis in contemporary times is that it's all absorbed into probabilistic thinking, where we're all just aggregates. Like the future to me is risk. And, it's like the prefrontal cortex, like what's happening and what are you going to do about it? There have been many ways in which people have encountered this problem throughout human history, but for the last 400 or so years, but basically since Blaise Pascal to now, we've normalized a probabilistic way of thinking, which is making people into counts. making people into numbers, making people into aggregates, making people into probability that, you know, is also making people into demographics, you know, like what is a, you know, what is a population and what is a population crisis constituted out of, that I think we have to get outside of, get beyond of, and return to older senses of risk analysis, like Oscar, I'm looking in your direction now, divination, fortune, fate, and even influence. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the future. And dreams, I already told you what I thought about dreams. So, thank you.
Si no sé, yo quisiera contestar a la pregunta sobre qué son los sueños para mí. Como explicaba, entrada a la literatura fue escuchar a mi mamá y a mi abuela contarse los sueños, interpretarlos todos los días. Vivíamos en el mismo cuarto, entonces todos los días las escuchaba a ellas contarse sueños, ¿no? Y bueno, yo pues desde ese entonces he pensado que si bien me cuesta mucho pensar que los sueños tienen una conexión con otro mundo, afuera de uno y demás, bien que el otro lado de mi mente piensa que los sueños son una conversación auténtica con uno mismo, con una misma, que no se puede tener de ninguna otra manera que no sea dormidos, ¿no? Sea dormidos, ¿no? Y es ahí donde pienso que los sueños son, pues, esta posibilidad de liberarse de la carne y de la probabilidad, ¿no? de ser una estadística más, porque se da esa verdadera complicidad con nuestro interior. Eso, ya se conectan a otros mundos, eso es otra cosa en la cual no me meto y que creo que para eso está la poesía, ¿no?
First of all, muchas gracias, Edgar y Wingston. I've really enjoyed hearing your poetry, and I'm buzzing and truly inspired and grateful to be in this space. And in regards to the questions, particularly thinking about play and dreams, and I realize there's actually a lot of overlap for me in thinking about those two things. With play, I'm also thinking about daydreaming specifically, and especially in relation to this poem that I read today, Hearsay, and how every time I came to it, I really stretched to just create this space in which I didn't know like quite what I was writing and what was going to happen, and the way this poem has morphed in the past year and a half, having the space to ask like what voices are here, because they were coming up, but I didn't even know like their names and what was happening. And it just kept shifting and changing, and the language kept shifting and changing, and the references and kept shifting and changing. And I think for me, so much ends up being collapsed. And for me, in this poem, and I think in the way that I've now begun like relating to my writing, the way I've begun relating to how I think about play and dreams in the future. So to the second question about the future, the past and present and future have become very entangled in terms of the way that I approach my writing and the way I think about it now. So the quote that I had at the beginning of my piece from Amy Césaire at the end of Daybreak, which repeats through the book Notebooks on a Return to My Native Land. And the whole, like the book is just about like getting there. You don't quite get there, but it's in this liminal space. And so I've been thinking a lot about what is in that liminal space in between geographies in between linguistic spaces, and even also just the threads of music and how music like salsa, which has Afro-Cuban in origin, but also like mixed in with like Puerto Rican and Dominican music and actually came to be in New York City, or reggaeton, which takes the Jamaican dance hall beat and has this roots in Spanish reggae in Panama, and then morphs into reggaeton there, but also like becomes even, what we recognize as reggaeton in Puerto Rico. So thinking about the collapsing of time, of like of past, present, and future, but also the collapsing of other things too.
Poetry collapses everything into the present moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you all for those generous responses. I think they just really, it really encapsulates for us just a sense of what you're doing in your poems, and reminds us that, right, the dream work is playful. It necessarily takes us out of the present and necessarily moves us towards that elsewhere that we need to go to. Thank you for taking us there with your readings tonight.
Miriam, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I would love to know what motivated you and Oscar to, I'm very happy and like pleased and honored to be invited, but what motivated you two to organize this reading around dreams? Central American poets, but why dreams? Why? I want to hear from you two.
Sure. I can go first. I think I read this book by Ernesto Bassi on like what he calls I'm gonna butcher this thing. It's the greater trans-imperial Caribbean world. I mean, it's basically like Colombia, like the Central America and the Caribbean. And I mean, I don't know. I think that book ripped open a lot, and I started to think about sailor geographies and what is aquatic thinking and what could that look like, and how is maybe this oceanic place a cosmopolitan place, and also a place where nothing is settled, like I think we have this like weird idea of history sometimes, but it's like, there were like indigenous tribes in Nicaragua who spoke English, and like, the Spanish were ashamed that they couldn't that they had to get a translator to talk to them. And it's like everything was always risk, and everything was always alive, and there was so much dreaming. You would get kidnapped, put on a boat, learn Dutch, then go into Jamaica and pick up patois, or like it's like I just think of the isthmus and the archipelago as these like pirate spaces, and there's a lot of juicy refusal there. There's a lot in being slippery, and the crime of sailing all flags, right? And just and so I just there's just that tradition, and I feel like I find it a lot in the work that you all do, and I was like, I need this to happen, and I'm just, maybe that's my Sagittarius Mercury kind of constellating all those things together, because it's a lot of things actually. It's like a it's like, let's get into the errant, and let's get into the pirate stuff. I
mean, Oscar and I have had conversations about this, and I know they've talked to me about this Ernesto Bassi text, and I love the oceanic as a way to also kind of take us toward thinking about also terrain and land. Last semester when I was teaching, my students and I talked a lot about maps, right? And the idea of the map as a colonial thing that labels, that names, that creates these boundaries that inscribes, right? And what happens when you have that colonial inscribing, what is it foreclose, right? I mean, that's what, to me, when I think about the discursive, the written word, right? And its origins from, you know, the way that the written word from the West comes and it imposes itself, right? Through map making, through language, and through other means. You know, the thing about poetry is that it is language, right? It's not always written, but it's language. But it's language that can take us off the map in different ways. And I think all of your work, you know, for me, is a way of taking us off of those maps. The sonic dimensions, the way that you read, the way that that sonic aspect also has to do with, right? Like when we're thinking about the train, it's about taking us up here, right? And it's about taking us into the dream space. It's about taking us away from that rootedness that coloniality has really just bound us to. So I think that's, just to add to Oscar's beautiful comments, I mean, I think to me, that's why I wanted to also hear you all together and just to take us out of the kind of rigidity that we think of with language, right? And to think about it as something that can remake what the territory is, and take us somewhere else. Yeah, that's my response.
Thank you.
Oscar, do you want to close this out? Because I don't want to
Oh,
hold
the
everybody.
time?
But
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
it's so
Cool.
easy to talk
I
about.
know, it's so easy. I mean, we should just keep having Zooms after this too. Yeah, and this won't
But-
be this will not be the end. And
No.
I'm excited to continue this work with the three of you in all types of different ways. And so, yeah, I guess, you know, I wanted to thank everybody for coming. This is the first event in a series of 3. In April on the 15th, we have Archives of Salvadoran Cinema. And then we have an event in May, on May 13th, an evening with Queer Poeticas. And yeah, anything else you want to add, Miriam?
I don't think so.
Cool.
Come to our events and we'll hang out here for a little bit if anybody wants to hang out and talk, as the Poetry Project typically does. If the staff has nothing to add, then thank you for coming, everybody. It's been a pleasure. Really, really, really. There's so much more to say. But we'll let you be unless you wish to linger.